Your biological perimeter is currently being breached by 1,000 invisible social probes. Look at your reactions in any high-stakes interaction. You are a biological unit that is leaking strategic intent through every micro-expression and verbal hesitation. You are living in a simulation where the visual rage of social combat has been sanitized into professionalism and networking, but in the terminal of reality, these are just sophisticated layers of a dominance test that you are failing every single hour. You have been conditioned to seek consensus and mutual respect, which are merely psychological containment protocols designed to ensure you remain a soft target for those who actually understand the mechanics of power. Your skin is sallow from the stress of trying to be liked, and your nervous system is vibrating at the high-frequency pitch of the reactive, the male who responds to the frame of others rather than imposing his own. You are breathing in the toxic fumes of a collective that demands you be transparent, leaving you lightheaded, predictable, and fundamentally easy to manipulate. You are not a sovereign, you are a data source, a resource unit whose empathy is being harvested to fuel the agendas of those who have replaced their conscience with a calculator. The system doesn't want your leadership, it wants your predictable compliance to be the default. Thousands of years ago, the dominance test was a physical event with lethal consequences. Your ancestor, the sovereign of the unmapped dark, understood that trust was a tactical vulnerability. He possessed primal grounding in the architecture of the trap. He didn't participate in discussions. He managed information flows. His hierarchy was built on the foundation of opaque authority. The ability to remain an enigma while scanning others for their biological breaking points. The dominance test of his time was a silent appraisal of nerve. If a rival could make him flinch, blink, or over-explain, the rival knew he was a secondary unit, a follower. His biological rebellion was his total refusal to be read. He possessed a mind that treated the social environment as a minefield of intent, where every word was a probe and every silence was a shield. He understood that power is not granted. It is stolen by the unit that can withstand the most psychological pressure without revealing its internal state. And you have the social security of a domestic animal. You have been systematically dismantled by a culture that demands you share your feelings, which is just a tactical requirement for your total mapping and subsequent neutralization. The 90% fail because they prioritize comfort over control. Manipulation tactics are the implementation of the anti-chew protocol for your final social sovereignty. The system wants you to be open-minded and collaborative, words that mean impressionable and weak. Absolute sovereignty is a biological siege of the collective will. It is the visual rage of the architect, seeing the social grid for what it is, a series of framing traps, stimulus-response lures, and deciding to be the one who sets the frame. You must develop a clinical, cold contempt for standardized social reciprocity. Fairness is a horizontal bond for the herd. Leverage is a vertical tool for the elite. You must learn to occupy the blind spots of the social contract. Use the temporal noose of strategic silence to force others to fill the void with their own insecurities. Use the false safety of a polite nodding mask to mask the activation of your total non-compliance. This is the color of freedom. By being the only person in the room who is internally unreachable, you become the only person who is dominant. Most people are meat puppets who seek belonging through agreement. You must become the one who commands compliance through the sheer gravity of your own information control. The Matrix cannot manipulate a man who provides zero internal data. Your time is the temporal noose, and your need to explain is the knot. Every justification you provide to a non-sovereign entity is a signature on your own biological surrender. I command you, initiate the total dominance audit. Your mind is a biological weapon, and it is currently being jammed by the social static of the unworthy. You must perform a hard reset of the strategic instincts. Stop being reasonable, the industrial waste designed to keep you negotiating while they strip your territory. Stop watching their communication workshops, the digital propaganda designed to make you believe that being heard is a victory. Stop using their social etiquette, the narratives designed to keep you in a state of polite subservience. You must prune your life of social parasites. If an interaction doesn't increase your perceived authority, your informational leverage, or your territorial reach, it is a biological saboteur. You must learn to love the friction of the cold gaze. You must learn to love the weight of the silence that follows when you refuse to play the game. This is the monolith strategy, becoming a biological fortress that is unreadable by choice and sovereign by design. Command: set the frame or be framed. The neural architecture of your social survival is currently riddled with exploitable loops. Look at your reflexive politeness. It is not a virtue. It is a biological surrender to the visual rage of the social machinery. You are a biological unit experiencing a total cognitive extraction. The Matrix has effectively effectively replaced your predatory intuition with a systemic civility. You believe that by being empathetic, available, and cooperative, you are building a network of allies. But in the terminal of the high-stakes environment, you are merely broadcasting that your activation energy is up for auction. This is the visual rage of the domesticated male, seeing your high-value strategic potential being liquidated into harmonization and teamwork, while the true operators remain in the shadows, calculating the exact moment of your structural collapse. You are living in a state of chronic psychological transparency where your will has been relabeled as inflexibility and your privacy has been relabeled as distrust. You are breathing in the exhaust of a social grid that treats your dominance as a pathology to be cured through emotional intelligence and consensus building. You are a resource-rich organism whose strategic core has been hollowed out to fund the stability of the mediocre. The system doesn't want your genius, it wants your vulnerability to be the lubricant for its expansion. In the ancient hierarchy, the law of the unbreaking frame, the master was the one who could remain a biological anchor, even in a storm of deceit. Your ancestor, the sovereign of the absolute dark, understood that manipulation was a product of perceptual control. He mastered primal grounding by becoming an impenetrable monolith, a figure whose internal state was a black box, a secure system with no external data output. He understood that to be reasonable is to be malleable. If you are participating in a fair exchange of information, you are acknowledging that the other person is your equal in the architecture of reality. His biological superiority was built on the foundation of information asymmetry. He knew that the human brain is a machine that runs on validation hooks, and by refusing to provide a standardized reaction, he triggered a biological panic in his rivals. He was a master of the visual rage of the unmoving presence, the ability to watch a manipulator's social probe fall flat and let the silence grow until the manipulator began to offer concessions out of sheer psychological discomfort. And you are a creature of rapport. You spend your drive on the visual rage of being understood, when the only understanding you should seek is the total mapping of your opponent's insecurities. To be a master, you must first become psychologically expensive to the collective. Manipulation tactics are the activation of the anti-chew protocol for your final internal dominance. The Matrix wants you to be transparent and collaborative, words that mean predictable and weak. Absolute sovereignty is a biological siege of the collective consciousness. It is the visual rage of the architect, seeing the social grid for what it is, a series of shame control nodes, stimulus response lures, and deciding to be the one who burns the grid. You must develop a clinical, cold contempt for mainstream social skills. Active listening is a horizontal bond for the herd. Absolute frame control is a vertical tool for the elite. You must learn to occupy the psychological high ground by controlling the flow of your own biological inputs. Use the temporal noose of total informational starvation to drive your rivals into a state of cognitive dissonance. Use the false safety of a neutral social profile to mask the viral infection of your total non-compliance with the beta norms. This is the collar of freedom. By mastering the art of the unmoved soul, you become the only person in the room whose value is not being broadcast from their approval. Most people are meat puppets who can be manipulated by a leading question or a social slight. You must become the one who uses the silence as his primary throne. You are not socializing, you are deleting the weakness. The one who can go the longest without external validation is the one who controls the validation of everyone else. Your time is the temporal noose, and your need to be liked is the knot. Every reassurance you seek from the Matrix is a signature on your own biological death warrant. I command you, initiate the second stage of the dominance rearmament. Your mind is a biological engine, and it is currently being choked by the empathy sludge of the unworthy. You must perform a total neural dominance reset. Stop being agreeable to those who offer you nothing but their own judgment. Stop being a node in their network of mutual understanding. Stop being a unit of compliance in their ledger of respectable peers. You must prune your social interactions with the collar of absolute sovereignty. If a relationship requires you to sacrifice your primal drive, it is a biological saboteur. You must learn to love the weight of the silence. You must learn to love the friction-heavy hours where the noise of the collective is muted and your dominance is the only signal in the dark. This is the monolith strategy, becoming a biological fortress that is unreadable by choice and sovereign villain by design. You are not a member of their social civilization. You are the one who is going to outlast its decay. Command: hold the frame or be the picture. Your biological trajectory has reached the terminal velocity of social liquidation. Look at your reflexive validation threshold, the exact moment your nervous system triggers a compulsion to nod, to smile, or to offer a social bridge to someone who is actively attempting to deconstruct your authority. You are a biological system in a state of chronic activation decay. The system has successfully replaced your predatory discernment with a series of civilized proxies. You no longer seek to dominate the frame. You seek to facilitate the meeting. You no longer seek to own the information. You seek to be transparent. You no longer seek to be the sovereign. You seek to be liked. This is the visual rage of the terminal slave, seeing your life force being digitized and archived in a consensus, while your physical reality remains a quiet, managed enclosure of unfulfilled DNA. You are breathing in the toxic fumes of a collective that demands your vulnerability as a form of tribute, leaving you lightheaded, fragmented, and fundamentally easy to override. Your dominance is not a behavioral choice. It is a physical weight that has been hollowed out by 1,000 layers of psychological softening. The system doesn't want your insight. It wants your internal state to be a public record. Return to the ancient hierarchy, the law of the unbreaking monolith. In the primal world, the master was the one who could remain a biological anchor, even in the center of a storm of deception. Your ancestor, the sovereign of the absolute cold, understood that dominance was a product of biological certainty. He mastered primal grounding by becoming an impenetrable core, a figure whose thoughts were his own property and whose silence was the only law. He understood that to seek agreement is to confess inferiority. If you are participating in the social script provided by others, you are acknowledging that their reality is the barometer of yours. He used his manipulation resistance to create a cognitive resonance of absolute unshakable divinity. By being the master of his own internal feedback, he forced the collective to seek direction from his stillness. He was a master of the visual rage of the unblinking sun, the ability to look at the social probes of the tribe and see only the weaknesses they represented. He understood that the human brain is a machine that runs on validation loops, and by cutting the validation, he triggered a biological shutdown in anyone who tried to manipulate him. And you are terrified of awkwardness. You spend your energy trying to keep the peace when the only peace you should care about is the total submission of the environment to your vision. To be a king, you must first become psychologically unreceptive to the herd. Manipulation tactics are the activation of the anti-chew protocol for your final mental expansion. The matrix wants you to be open and accessible, words that mean harvestable and weak. Absolute sovereignty is a biological jailbreak of the mind. It is the visual rage of the architect, seeing the social grid for what it is, a series of framing control nodes, stimulus response lures, and deciding to be the one who burns the grid. You must develop a clinical, cold contempt for mainstream social ethics. Honesty is a horizontal bond for the herd. Strategic information management is a vertical tool for the elite. You must learn to occupy the psychological high ground by controlling the flow of your own biological inputs. Use the temporal noose of total informational starvation to drive your rivals into a state of hyper-focus on you. Use the false safety of a neutral social profile to mask the viral infection of your total non-compliance with the beta norms. This is the collar of freedom. By mastering the art of the unmoved soul, you become the only person in the room whose value is not being broadcast from their approval. Most people are meat puppets who can be manipulated by a social slight or a trained response. You must become the one who uses the void as his primary throne. You are not socializing. You are deleting the weakness. The one who can go the longest without giving a reaction is the one who controls the reaction of everyone else. Your time is the temporal noose, and your need to be understood is the knot. Every explanation you provide to the matrix is a signature on your own biological death warrant. I command you, initiate the final dominance imperative. This is the tax of insight. You have been given the key to the vault of biological power. To keep it, you must use it as a weapon of total social dominance. You must become a living monolith of unshakable indifference. You are no longer a peer, a colleague, or a friend. You are a sovereign operator. You must perform a total system liquidation. If a relationship, a technology, or a habit requires you to be transparent, it is a biological saboteur. You must prune your life with the collar of the absolute zero. You are building a fortress of results in a world of digital shadows. Your strength is the physical proof of your biological leverage. You do not provide information. You create a reality in which you are the only absolute truth. You do not seek consensus. You are the law itself. You are the architect of your own frame, and the world is merely a mirror reflecting your ascent. Command: be the void, or be filled by the noise.